Caddis Maximus here, this time with just a quick review of a couple of MicroPlanes. These are sold, actually they're most popular now as a food product, although they originally came out as a form of sheet metal wood rasp or wood file. But the sheet metal grating and kitchen tools really started to take off, and that's where MicroPlane really finds most of their businesses in the food grading products. The reason sheet metal food products are popular is they're cheap and they work quite effectively because everything falls right through the sheet metal. It has a thin cross section, so there just isn't a lot of surface area for stuff to want to stick to. And finally, because sheet metal tools can be made with very complex and very consistent patterns that just aren't achievable with many other tools. And the MicroPlanes just really popularized these stick versions. So we actually, I believe, is known as the MicroPlane Classics, the 40020. It was kind of interesting trying to find a part number. It was easy for this one. This one, I hunted down through images and could barely find any part numbers for this specific MicroPlane. They did start improving them from the classic version. They're about the same, but I believe that the sheet metal is just a touch thicker on the newer version. They did change the orientation of the word MicroPlane. I thought that was kind of funny. And they printed it on both sides, so now that they have their patent number there, they also etched it on both sides of the tool itself. But of course, the one thing they forgot was an actual part number. But they got their patent number on there 4 times. On this one, it's a little more conservative. It's just one light little stamping right there. Let's go ahead and zoom in and get a real close look at these so you can see the pattern. This is sold as, I believe, their food zester. I'll do, a food review every once in a while, but I'm not like a foodie. So, I have plenty to criticize about my diet. So I actually use these as, not as woodworking tools, but as drywall tools. For soft, brittle materials like drywall, these things actually work really well. Just a quick, if you have to hand saw or cut, these are really nice because they only take a couple of seconds to actually smooth out and flatten an edge of a piece of drywall because it really cuts the paper and obviously the drywall itself very effectively. For the same reasons it works well in the kitchen, is because all the particles can just easily fall through and it shaves it off. They're called MicroPlanes because the idea is just like a wood plane where you have a flat surface and then you have a little blade sticking out. God, it would be more like this. A little blade sticking out from the flat surface, and then the flat surface helps you control the depth of the blade, and then you're just shaving up a small curl. And so that's why they work so well on food, particularly things like Parmesan cheese, but is this in the same case drywall. And let's take a close look at the second one. Oh, if you do use these for food, or for maybe you glued something and you're trying to rasp off some wood glue, they work okay for that. Don't use a Brillo pad scrub brush, because the way these tools work is that they either laser etch them, laser cut them. They don't stamp them because the stamping process leaves way too inconsistent of an edge for a tool like this to work. So these are either laser cut or what is known as etching. Many people in crafts will be familiar with glass etching. You apply a layer of plastic, you cut out the shape that you want, then you apply hydrofluoric acid to it, and it'll eat away some of the glass. That's the same method that they use. They can put a real cheap plastic mask over it and then use a particular acid that would eat through this. These are stainless steel. They're not going to be the very hardest of steels because no stainless can achieve extreme high hardness. They can have strength and durability and heat resistance, but they just don't achieve the highest hardness. And so for a MicroPlane, if they're using a quality stainless, they'd be using something like 440C, which is a very common, decent grade or good grade of stainless knife blade steel. And if they were real special, then they might be using a precipitation hardening type of stainless. But they don't actually advertise specifically what grade of steel that they're using. And I find that a little bit unfortunate, but they seem to hold up pretty well. Anyway, I'm not exactly sure what this tool is advertised for, but I just use it as a very aggressive drywall rasp. Anyway, when you use a Brillo pad, since they rely on super sharp edges, the Brillo pad is actually deburring all these edges when you use it and actually dulling the tool. So always remember that. That's why they say don't use Brillo pads on polished surfaces, because they actually have little grits, sandpaper grit in them, essentially. That's what makes them clean so well. Unfortunately, in certain applications like these microplanes, you're actually ruining the tool by using a Brillo pad. Unless you're using one of those safety ones that's, doesn't use aluminum oxide and other, hard ceramic particles. They do sell these, and I believe they actually, MicroPlane came out with the idea of having them be wood rasps. Basically, instead of using what would be the traditional bastard file, you would end up using one of these, and you kind of get the effect of a bastard file or of any type of wood file. Let me zoom out a little bit here. As well as leaving a nice finish like a hand plane would. So kind of two tools in one, and then it really turns out that they're, much better in the kitchen. I think I said that. So we have a piece of cedar here, which is I wouldn't use these on any type of hardwood. They dull in a heartbeat. It's just the truth of the situation with stainless steel on many types of hardwoods. And the thing that people don't realize about wood is a plant, and it absorbs minerals. And some of those minerals are hard and abrasive. That's why, so many circular saw blades have carbide tips, and then they still wear out. They just get abraded. Anyway, it does work pretty well. When you're on a piece of cedar here, you have to get a decent amount of force. The one issue I'll have to say with woodworking is, since it's sheet metal, the center section will want to bow in, and it'll be kind of hard to really get it to make a real flat surface. But on thinner materials, it actually works pretty well. And we can see it kind of gouges it out a little bit, but it's not too bad. And then you can use some lighter force, like that, and it leaves an okay finish. I wouldn't say it's the same as a hand plane, because that pulls up one shaving. But if we do something like the coarse side of a bastard file here, which is traditionally what you might use to file wood, we can see that a bastard file actually is much worse. Although bastard files, of course, have fine sections, and when we use the fine section, if we're really doing some real nice smooth woodworking here, the fine section, works just about as well. I didn't get that straight. You're really supposed to hold the file straight so that the little cuts will come across. There, if you use it a little more properly, the fine side of a file actually polishes it, of a bastard file, on cedar, polishes it still better. But what is nice is these are aggressive, much more aggressive than a standard bastard file. And if we pick up some of these little chips here, we can see that it really does make little shavings, little curls. So that is pretty neat. This one's a little bit odd. It's a real aggressive unit. I don't know how well I'm gonna even be able to, it doesn't, well, that's kind of odd. It does kind of work, but how this one has just a bunch of humps, so this one's just real aggressive. Maybe if you're using this on Parmesan cheese or something, it would work great. As far as using it on drywall, I've done it just a couple of times now since I picked this up. I found this used at a thrift store, and it kind of caught my eye because they look strange. And it's amazingly fast. You can just do one full pass along the edge of a piece of drywall, kind of at a 45-degree angle, and you can remove 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch of material in one swipe. It really does work quite aggressively. And then you can just hit it with this side. And you say, well, you're finishing out drywall. What's nice about these is that you can have a particularly ugly or uneven section of drywall and just flush it up a little bit, and it makes everything else look a whole lot smoother. And on this one, I do like the way the little cutouts go around the edge, so you can actually get right up in a corner and kind of get a nice round corner, and it'll file it out. And it just gives you better fit and finish. I mean, if you're real good, then you can cut out the drywall hole, use one of these, and get it sized so well that you don't have to fill it in with any putty next to the electrical box. Everything's really done just, nicely, and it only can take an extra second. And these tools really are just, that's where they seem to shine. If they sold these in the drywall section, people would buy them because they'd be a fast and reliable way to straighten out, harsh cuts in a material like that. Anyway, I forgot to say happy Halloween, but have a safe and happy holiday. I did have some little background items for it there. And just wanted to kind of do my 2 cents review on a couple of these MicroPlanes. And I also forgot to mention, they seem to average around $12 to $15 a piece online. So they're a little spendy, to tell you the truth. And so I just wanted to give a little more information besides, people just zesting, lemons and onions and things like that. They actually work okay for woodworking, but they just, due to the stainless steel, the fact that they use integrated stainless steel, just aren't going to hold up quite the same way as an actual file steel, which is known as some of the very hardest available steel, and thus the very longest lasting. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Catus Maximus out.